Hello, hello, hello. So nice to see everyone this evening. I am going to be joined by Deepti and Stevie from Sikh Saach. Sikh Saach, I apologize. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to work on getting us all connected. Thank you. How's everyone doing this evening? Excellent, excellent. I see that Deepti joined. Hello, hello. Hi, Josh. Josh is going to be providing access for us. Let's see. I am just going to try to connect to our friends over at Sikh Saach, and we will get going. In the meantime, where are you guys coming from this evening? I'm here in Virginia.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Perfect.
So nice to see you, Deepti and Stevie. I love it when technology works. And thank you all for being here Friday evening. No, today's not Friday. What day is today? Today's Tuesday. It's one of those weeks. It's been one of those weeks. But here we go. I am Lauren with Me Too Many Voices, and this is part of the MTMV Sexual Assault Awareness Month celebration and observance. I am honored this evening to be joined by co-founders of Sikh Saach and Josh, who is providing ASL access. Sikh Saach, we have Deepti and Stevie here. Hello.
Hello, Lauren. Thank you so much for having us.
And so I apologize. My brain is thinking it's Friday. Here I am. Everyone's living on a Tuesday. I'm just trying to get it together. Deepti, do you mind introducing yourself a little bit more, talking a little bit more about your organization's work?
Absolutely. Lauren, thank you so much for the wonderful introduction. Just to start us off, and hello to everyone out there. My name is Deepti. I am from Sikh Saach. For the last 10 years, I've been involved in various advocacy roles, including in sexual assault and in foster youth organizations. And so I'm really excited to be here with you today to speak a little bit more about what Sikhism is, what Sikh Saach is, and what we hope to accomplish with this organization.
Thank you. Stevie, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, thanks.
So my name is Stevie Kaur, one of the co-founders with Sikh Saach. We started this organization because we did realize that for many years there has been a need to address the issue of sexual assault and violence within the Sikh community. My background is many years in trauma and advocacy work for sexual assault and also domestic violence. So Deepti and I came together so that we can start breaking down those barriers and taboos and start educating our community to keep them safe.
Incredible work. You two inspire me. Many people may not know much about Sikhism or the religion or what's been going on. Do you mind educating us a little bit?
Absolutely.
Sure. You want me to do it, Deepti, or you go ahead?
Go ahead, Stevie. Take it.
Okay. So Sikhi or Sikhism, we have been around, oh, I hear some audio screeches, just over 550 years. The faith, a lot of people don't know, but we're the fifth largest religion in the world. And some of us identify like this with turbans, and others identify like Deepti with her beautiful hair out. So everyone has a different path. We just believe in one God and serving humanity. It's really that simple. We try to walk a pure path and help humanity in any way we can. Recently, there's been some coverage on the news about some of our community members that we lost in Indianapolis. So usually when we get that attention, then people start to know, oh, so that's a Sikh. But we're hoping that they'll see our good work too and come to know us, for other than those mournful reasons.
I hope so too. We are going to be talking about acknowledging hard truths and the impact of victim blaming. Content warning, trigger warnings, for the following conversation. So we're going to be talking about acknowledging hard truths when it comes to sexual violence. Even admitting to yourself that you've been harmed can be one of the hardest things. It's almost like a Herculean task. Let alone, it's hard enough talking about sex, let alone sexual assault. Is that anything that you two would like to speak to?
Absolutely, Lauren. So I'm glad you bring that up because even in a westernized culture, it can be difficult to broach the topics of sex and especially sexual assault. But in our Sikh and our more specifically our Punjabi culture as well, which is a subsect of India, but to essentially state that in our culture, sex is not talked about at all. Growing up as a kid, I never talked about sex with my family, and I was too embarrassed to say anything to my family, regarding any, sexual education that I might have received growing up. So, especially in our culture, that is the norm. And so, as you can understand, that sexual assault is even a more difficult topic to broach. In our culture, sex outside of marriage is typically very frowned upon, both religiously and culturally. So it's been a little difficult for men, women, and children of the Sikh and Punjabi cultures to really be able to reach out to anyone. And that's been part of our growing issue, and that's the reason why we even created Sikh Saach, to begin to address some of these silences in the culture, to normalize the fact that these things happen, and not that it's okay, but it's okay to talk about it.
Thank you. Stevie?
So to add to that, I'm very direct, in my communication with the community. People generally know this about me. I just say it like it is. So with this issue, I'm a survivor myself. So I've been down the path of violence, sexual violence, abuse, and I've suffered through the traumas, and I've, walked through the process of healing. So I can really relate to everyone who's suffering silently with this. And right now, as I've started tabling and going to our gurdwaras or our Sikh temples to talk to the community members, right now, if an incident occurs, no one knows what to do. They have no answers, they have no guidance, so they just, well, don't say anything. Just, take your child home or whoever, and just let's not talk about it. So, as many of us in the SAAM community know, that first person that someone tells and trusts with this information is critical, it's crucial in the healing process. So we need to start educating our community that if a child, a woman, a boy, and whoever has been violated, if they go to someone they trust, tell them what to do. And that initial response from our community is one of love and support, so that we can start their healing process. When someone calls me and tells me something, that's initially what I start off. What can I do for you? Thank you for trusting me. How can I help you? How can I support you? So this is really important, and we need to spread this throughout the entire Sikh community so that they understand. Because right now they really don't know what to do. There's a mentality that has for generations been, if you've been raped, if you've been sexually assaulted, you're damaged goods. Now, who will want to marry you? And marriage is important to this community. So let's not mention it, because we want to make sure that you can get married and have a good life. But what they're failing to understand is that this is a trauma that this individual experienced, and it's not their fault or their blame. And in order to grow up and have a healthy life and a healthy partnership with whoever they marry, they need to have support and healing. Lots of things will come up as they age, and even me myself, it's not as much, but there are some times where there are triggers, that I mentioned before, and it's from trauma that I suffered. And I had a lot of support actually after this happened to me. But right now we need to put the focus on that it's not their fault that they were violated, assaulted, abused for many years. We need to put accountability on the perpetrator who committed the crime. So this is what we're really pushing for.
Yeah, so it's been a huge break into going against cultural norms and cultural taboos just to talk about sexual violence and sexual assault. And the purpose of Sikh Saach is try to make that change however we can. There has been a lot of backlash, but there also has been a lot of support. And we're looking out to everyone here that's in support of this cause to help further fuel change.
That's incredible. You two are trailblazers. I can imagine that not everybody in your community sees it as such, but you are starting and leading these difficult conversations in a community that, I mean, every community needs them. Don't get me wrong, but it seems like it's hard to have these conversations because of the cultural aspect of it, and everyone wants to sweep it under the rug. Nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to even name it as a problem.
Yeah, it's not just our community, it's every community, but we have to clean up our house. You know, we need to put safety measures in place, prevention, education programs. I talked to a lot of our Sikh temples are owned and managed by committees. So it's a team of people. And we really need to get them, because they're elders, to open up. And, you know, I talked to someone this weekend who was very positive and was very open and receptive. It was like, okay, when are you coming back so we can put something in place? You know, so this is what we want as we go through, because we plan on going, you know, throughout the nation, and having our ambassadors also do the same. But we will get some pushback because it's such an uncomfortable topic. You know, it's an ugly topic because sexual violence, you know, it's nasty, it's ugly. No one wants to think that, especially as someone of faith, like, you know, not we don't have priests, but it would be sort of equivalent maybe to, so you can understand, like a priest. No one wants to believe that they could harm a child in that way, that they would lure them in under disguise of like being a trusted individual and then assault them continuously, you know? So no one wants, because when you go to the temple, you're supposed to be in the house of God, the safest place. So it's inconceivable that this could happen. But unfortunately, the hard truth is that this has happened hundreds of times throughout the world, but definitely here in the US where we're at. So we need to send a big message to the community that Sikh Saach is now coming with policies, with education, so that a victim can say, hey, I don't have to be quiet. I have someone on my side. I know who I can call. You know, so we want to send that message that we are here now and we're not going anywhere.
Bring in that fire. Bring in that fire. You were talking, it makes me think of that quote from, there's this book, Trauma and Recovery by Judith Lewis Herman. It's very tempting to take the side of the perpetrator. All the perpetrator asks is that the bystander do nothing. He appeals to the universal desire to see, hear, and speak no evil. The victim, on the contrary, asks the bystander to share the burden of pain. The victim demands action, engagement, and remembering. I think about that a lot, and how it's a lot easier for people to not have these conversations, to hold abusers accountable, to stand with the victims.
Oh, absolutely. Believing the perpetrator is always the easy way, right? There's no cognitive dissonance, there's no changing in beliefs. Nothing needs to be challenged to believe the perpetrator. But that's the issue here. When we keep believing perpetrators, we keep allowing sexual violence to exist in spaces that should be safe. I don't think anyone here would ever disagree that every religious space should be a safe place. And that's what we envision it to be. That's what we imagine. But just because we believe it doesn't necessarily make it true.
Isn't that the truth? Isn't that the sad truth? And the power dynamics of it all. And it's sad, you know, people want to be able to have these safe spaces. People deserve these safe spaces. And when they're victimized in that safe space, that quote unquote safe space. It's, you know, where are you supposed to go?
Exactly. And that's what a lot of survivors and victims are struggling with. A lot of allies are struggling with. There is no national leadership in the Sikh community for to combat sexual violence and sexual misconduct even. So a lot of people have been struggling to work on that issue, and that's Sikh Saach. We're designed to be that national leadership to help organize a lot of these causes that are currently working on the issue but not jointly. So I want to do a little shout out real quick to at Sikh Teens. I know they're releasing a huge resource guide for Sikh victims and survivors right now, and it's set to release on April 27th. So follow at Sikh Teens to get a little bit more of an idea of what resources look like in our community. And that's, to be honest, that is the first step that I have heard of a resource guide being published for victims and survivors. And so it's kind of heartbreaking that it's taken so long for something like this to happen, but it's also really inspiring and really heartwarming to realize that there are so many people out there in support of this cause, and even teenagers are out there making a huge difference. It's absolutely amazing.
It's inspiring.
I think also we've just had enough, Lauren. We've been in talks with many people, organizations in our community throughout the world. We've just had enough. We have Canada, the UK, we have Core Voices, we have the Core Movement, we have Sikh Teens. We're just done. Like, it has to stop now. So this toolkit that they've put out, that I've met with them and talked about it, it's a really good starting point, and it's a resource for people to go online and look. And I'm very proud of them, because we need the youth also, because youth is what makes change. It makes change last, and they have the energy and the spirit, and they have Stevie Deepti to come to.
Well, here in the comments, someone even just said, they took the words right out of my mouth. You are all making a difference. You are. And I know I look forward to seeing that resource guide, and I look forward to all of your posts when you post them. I'm appreciating the work that you're doing, and for sharing this platform with me this evening. We got another comment. Someone wrote in, it's tough to heal in the same environment you were harmed. Oh, isn't that the truth? It's all but impossible. It really is. It really is. You can't.
That's one of the lights.
How are you supposed to heal if you don't feel safe, if you don't feel heard?
That is tough. I mean, I know I experienced it, because it was a family member, and you just dread, the gatherings, and it took some time. But for me, and everyone will heal differently, but the day that I was able to face him, and because I was the one always running away, hiding in another room, escaping, but I was exhausted of it. I was beaten down so much emotionally from it. And I found the courage one day to stand in front of him and say, no, I'm not going to another room. You need to get out. And I don't know, it really shifted, everything changed. And then every family function thereafter, he was the one hiding in a room, or he would just drop someone off and then he would leave. And, but it took a number of years to get there, but I was finally there. And not everyone, can just leave a home, or if they're still underage. For me, I'm always available by phone to talk to someone. Anyone can always reach out to us, both of us, and we have other people as well. However we can help them, if they're over 18, and they do, I will do everything I can to get them a safe place, because I know what that's like to be in that terror. That's the best word I can, use, is it's a terror, you just feel trapped and motionless, but even though you're not, you can move, but you just can't feel like that. So definitely, anyone who needs to reach out to us, please do. This is a start for you.
And absolutely. I just wanted to jump on there and add that we are an absolutely confidential resource. So whoever does reach out to us, it stays between us. This isn't going out to the rest of the community. Your parents will not find out. This is between the person calling in and us. And then also, Stevie, I really wanted to say that the fact that you have been a survivor and a victim and you've now been able to add to the community in this way, I think it's absolutely amazing that you're so brave in bringing that up and just sharing that support, that understanding with other survivors and victims. And I feel like you've done it a few times, and every single time I hear about it, even more and more so, I think it's absolutely commendable that you have so much strength.
Thank you. I'm strong now. I wasn't as strong. It took a number of years to get strong, but now I'm ready. Let's go. Whatever we have to do, whatever I have to do, I'm ready to go.
And that's the thing, like another thing I wanted to touch up on, you were saying that as someone who had been victimized, you had to hide, while the perpetrator was able to walk around freely and just have access to all of this space. And that's something I think a lot of people struggle with, where survivors and victims for generations have had to hide, while the perpetrators, the ones who should be suffering the backlash, are not.
Yeah, my hope is that we start turning the tables. We pivot now, and now it's time to where a girl like me, or when I was a girl, won't have to endure that so long. That maybe we can, motivate them, encourage them, and inspire them to have that strength within themselves. It's so different for everyone, but we need to stop having those perpetrators stand up, reading from a holy book, like they're just so godly, and it's just, to me, it's a sheep in wolf's clothing, and why is she staying at home? She doesn't get to practice her faith, or he does. This happens to boys too, many boys actually. He doesn't get to practice his faith and be with his, congregation and the family, because there's so much shame and and you need to hide. We definitely need to stop that. We need to encourage them that, and stand with them. But we need the community. We call our community our congregants, the Sanghas. So we need them to stand and support victims and survivors. Not talk about them and be like, oh, did you hear blah, 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 blah. No, we need to stop that. That was a child who was assaulted, violated, and you took their innocence, and now you want to say things about them and the family? No, you need to be a better human and support them.
And in creating those safe spaces, we're not just talking about a space that's free of perpetrators, not just religious spaces, but all spaces in general, where it's not just free of perpetrators, but where it's a society, where it's a culture that will embrace the people who have been injured and victimized and be able to support them in their healing process. I think that's the most important part when it does come to facing a lot of this, is to have that.
Yeah. In everyone that I've spoken to, and it's many throughout the nation, there are only 2 women who have not told me they have been violated in some way. 2 out of hundreds and hundreds. Someone has a story, someone has told me something. I only know 2 personally, and I've traveled around the U.S. Everyone has been harmed in some way, except for 2 people that I know.
Yeah, that is very sobering. It's very sobering and real. It's, and yet there's still so much victim blaming that goes on. Do you see a lot of victim blaming within your community?
Oh, absolutely. Isn't it so much easier to blame one child versus a perpetrator who's serving as a role model, who's, shown to be religious, who's very well connected, maybe well funded? There's a lot of different factors here at play, but historically, it has always been easier to state that a particular behavior could have easily solved this, or a change in behavior could have easily solved this, as opposed to actually blaming the individual who's doing these actions.
We're still having, in our comments from men, because I haven't heard it from women yet, that even as children, a child 3 and 4 years old, well, they should know better. Don't go around him. how is a 3-year-old supposed to know that that man is a predator and is, has these tendencies to do, like, how is a child supposed to know? How are they supposed to take preventative measures? They're innocent. They don't even know what's going on, and we'll hear other things like, well, if she wasn't wearing those clothes, she should wear loose clothes, or she should have we have scarves. I don't like the scarves. I don't wear them. But a lot of women wear scarves called chunis, to cover up and be modest. Well, she didn't have her chunie on, so that's why, he was looking, or he touched her, or her this and that. And I just keep thinking, God made my body. So how can you be in a house of worship and even say these things when, this is my own temple? Why are you violating it?
Yeah. Wow. I'm seeing a lot of I don't know if you saw that, but a lot of the floating hearts coming in for you as you were saying that. People were feeling that. People wrote in, it's all BS. Someone wrote, sexual assault is an epidemic. It's just many suffer in silence. Someone else here wrote that they did not like to go to church because they hate seeing them on the stage. How heartbreaking. Yet another person not feeling safe in their safe space while, a congregation and a community continues to uplift the abusers. But then, the victims were supposed to know, all the while the community is continuing to uplift the person. Like, how are you supposed to know? And as a child, it's not your responsibility. I mean, it not isn't as an adult, but as a child, you don't know. You're a child. Your job, someone else is supposed to be protecting you. You're just supposed to be a child and explore and learn. Someone wrote in, I was told I was too friendly with my abuser. He was my friend for years. It's never the victim's fault. You're allowed to be friends with people. You're allowed to date people. You're allowed to go out. You're allowed to wear what you want. It's never your fault. It's never your fault.
And that's some of the wording too, we have to be careful with, because, they say, well, don't drink. A lot of in our community, they don't drink or smoke or do drugs, any of that. I mean, some do because they're human, but there are many that don't. So they push that, well, don't drink alcohol. But I keep saying, yeah, I don't drink alcohol. But if I did and I was passed out drunk, that does not give you a right to touch me. You can call 911 and help me, but you do not have a right to touch me. If I'm wearing a skirt, that doesn't give you a right to touch me. I give you no consent to touch me. So there's no circumstance, no situation, nothing that gives anyone a right, man or woman, to put their hands on me.
It's almost as though people who have been victimized are damned if they do and damned if they don't. If they say something, they get victim blamed. If they don't say something, then later, if something happens to other children, or at some point when they finally are able to build that courage and say something and have the supportive environment to actually say something, then they're still blamed for not having said anything quickly enough. So where do they win? At what point? Like, how can they potentially even be right if there is no place for them to be right? They did nothing wrong to begin with. So just creating that safe space and creating that culture that embraces people who have been victimized instead of blaming them is a huge step forward. As we understand, it's going to take decades and centuries for that to even happen, unfortunately. But we're taking all the right steps and we're doing the right things, and hopefully that'll help.
Absolutely. And you all are making a world of difference in the work that you're doing, even having this conversation here. So many people are hearing you and seeing you, regardless of whether they say it out loud. Someone's listening and feeling a little less alone. Someone just wrote in, my abuser was someone I was in a 9-month relationship with. I was profusely called a liar when I came forward because I stayed. Yeah, being married, being in a relationship, that's not consent either. And it is remarkably difficult to leave those situations. Everyone here listening, I believe you, we believe you.
And in our culture, in the Sikh culture, Punjabi culture, they're not taught this. They're not taught that when you get married, that no is still no, that you still need consent. Even my husband, when I was educating him on a piece, he goes, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Did anyone tell you this? Did your parent?" Like, no one explained, because he's a very religious man, so he didn't have any sex education. But he really, like many of the men, many of the people, all the families, they think that you get married, that's your wife, and you do as you need to do, But I made it very clear to my husband and many people throughout the years, even when you're married and, I'm your wife, if I say no, that means absolutely no. There is no discussion about it. It's just no. And he's very respectful, but he just didn't know. He thought that, you're married, so I'm entitled to my wife whenever I want. And I said, oh, no, no, no. This is not how it's supposed to be. And we need to keep enforcing that and letting others. So one of our board members, we were talking, and she said, well, the parents need to tell their children. But nobody told the parents. The parents didn't have education. The grandparents didn't have education. So how can they educate the children that what consent is, that no is no, good touch, bad touch, like all these things? It's just not talked about. Your sex education is when you get married. You'll figure it out. In America, in school, we have sex ed classes now. But this is a society that comes from the north of India, where it's not happened. So that passes through generation to generation, and it's still, your mother's not going to talk to you about the birds and the bees. You're going to learn it when you get married, because you shouldn't even know about that stuff until you're married. Which we know we need education.
Absolutely. It's so ingrained. And if you don't know, how are you supposed to know? And if you're being violated, how are you supposed to know that's not okay if that's what you're taught is okay? If that's what's taught is your duty. Someone wrote in, sexual education and prevention programs are effective in reducing incidents of sexual violence. Absolutely. Absolutely. This has been a great conversation. We're not quite done, but getting close to the end. But so if anybody has any questions, put them in the chat. And for folks who are just joining, we are here with Deepti and Stevie from Sikh Saach, talking about accepting hard truths and the impact of victim blaming. Thank you all for being here again. I know the theme of the MTMV SAAM celebration and observance is asking for consent saves lives. What does that mean to you both?
If you had asked me this when I was a kid, I would have asked you, what is consent? We have literally, to be perfectly honest, I don't even think I heard the word consent until I was an undergrad and doing a sex ed class at that time, human sexuality. This is maybe my sophomore year, and that's the first time I had ever heard the word consent. I had no idea that there's a choice in all of this. There's the choice in who I get to hug. There's the choice in who I get to, have sexual relations with. There was never that sort of a concept that was taught to us growing up. And I'm both Punjabi and Sikh. So involved in those cultures, this was never talked about. Sex ed was never talked about. Consent was never talked about. So that's an interesting question. I can tell you my perspective as an adult, but as a child, I never understood with that.
Thanks for sharing that, Stevie.
Consent we're getting more familiar with, but in this community, anyone can come up and hug you and kiss you, and you're expected to comply. That's your uncle, that's your auntie. They're all uncles, they're all aunties. So even my husband, I had to tell him, you can't just go up to children and hug them and kiss them. And he was like, why? And I said, no, because you don't have consent. Like, even they're a child, you don't have their consent. So no. So it's just, again, no one taught them, But when we talk about saving lives, a lot of people think that means like life or death. You didn't save a life, so that's death. But when you don't get consent and you violate someone, it's not always death. I always say death is easy, it's done. But when you have to live with that trauma, you can go into such a state of depression. You can then be suicidal. You can isolate yourself from the beautiful world and the beautiful people in it. To me, it's so much worse than death, because you know that life is happening around you, but you've now gotten to such a place because of your trauma. You don't trust anyone. You're scared, fearful, frightened. There's all kinds of triggers. You can't have healthy relationships. So yeah, by having consent, you could save life in that way. That's what that means to me.
Thank you.
So I'm going to share a little story. Do we have time, Lauren?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Do we have time, Lauren? I have a quick story to share on consent, actually. I think that'll be kind of relevant here and kind of important.
Yes,
So,
please.
growing up, sorry?
I was just saying yes, please. Sorry.
So, growing up I'm from Los Angeles and I'm currently here right now. So, growing up in the Sikh and Punjabi culture in Los Angeles, I went to a lot of camps. I was very, very involved growing up as a kid. And I went to a lot of summer camps, a lot of weekends, religious. A lot of people have youth group and Sunday school. We had all of that growing up. So every weekend, that's exactly what me and my group of friends did. And so I had a lot of people that I would consider siblings, a lot of people my age, a lot of younger siblings. And so growing up in that environment, in this culture where everything is hush-hush related to sexual abuse, it wasn't, I think it was maybe 15 or so when I first learned that there were people who were being sexually abused, and they came to me as an older sibling and they were telling me about this, and we talked about what they could do. We talked about going to a trusted adult. We thought about reporting it to someone else. We thought about reporting it to a school teacher not affiliated with the cultural organization or the religious organization at all, but just some trusted adult. We never talked about the idea of asking him to stop. Consent was never a topic. It was asking someone to stop or telling them to stop. And then in our culture, especially, respecting your elders is a huge, huge concept, where you're blindly taught to just trust and obey whoever is older than you, even further perpetuating this culture of sexual violence. And so it's kind of heartbreaking to even think that was never an option, just asking someone to stop. Consent has not existed, unfortunately, in our culture for a long time.
It's really powerful. And it speaks even more volumes to the work that you are doing to help, even if one person understands, oh, consent, or I don't have to, or I can say no, or there are people I can talk to. It doesn't always have to be like that. Although unfortunately it has. I'm seeing a couple of questions come in if you feel up for it. What gave you the courage to speak out?
That's our Maryland story.
So there was a case that came out about a year ago in Maryland about this young girl that had been sexually violated for a significant number of years. And despite having this happen, she somehow found the courage to tell people. And despite people finding out, the Gurdwara committee, Gurdwara as in Sikh temple, so we call them Gurdwaras, but the Gurdwara committee, knowing that this person was a perpetrator in the community, gave him employment, found him immigration status, and funded all of that for him despite knowing this. And for 25 years, they kept this perpetrator employed and in the contact of other minors. So we don't know how many other victims there are. Nonetheless, this went to court and this person was charged. And even after the charge, the individual was still kept on in the Gurdwara community. So we can't begin to estimate how many victims there are because of these inactions that the committee, chose to do. And the parents and the family of this child, they went on YouTube and they created a video. essentially stating everything that had happened. They talked about the court case. They talked about the lack of support in the community that they had. They were essentially ostracized from the community just because their child had been victimized. And they talked a lot about the committee members and what exactly was done to hush this entire case, and including coercion, including um, just a lot of blame and a lot of ineffective actions to push everything under the rug. So when this case came out, that's actually how Stevie and I met. So on this case, underneath in the YouTube comments, Stevie had put a comment stating that there's a need for something to be done. And immediately in seeing hers, I responded, and a series of back and forth. And within a month, we started Sikh Saach. We founded Sikh Saach in October, and then we were officially up and running in December of 2020. So it's been a very, very short time that we have been up and running, but we are very motivated, and Stevie brings all the fire. So we're really excited to be doing this.
Well, I agree that Stevie brings fire. You do too. You do too. So it's all due respect. I'm not going to let you discredit your self that way. Not on my watch.
Thanks,
We're the same. Her and I are the same. I tell her that and everyone else all the time. Same.
You have inspired a lot of people here. Someone chimed in, I'm working on tackling a child sexual abuse in Sudan, and I'm a survivor myself. So this is inspirational. I think there are a lot of similarities between our cultures, but then again, sexual assault knows no borders. Someone else chiming in from Poland. Absolutely. And I honestly, that's one of my favorite things about these online communities is that we're able to spread awareness and educate and build community, in so many different zip codes, countries, locales, and then able to bring it back to our own local communities. It's one of the things that keeps me going, as all of you. Thank you all for being here. Any other final thoughts, Deepti or Stevie, that you'd like to share?
I absolutely do, actually. So, Lauren, I know you're saying that you're finding inspiration in us, but I want you to know that Me Too Many Voices has been an amazing movement. I've been following you for the last, actually, Sikh Saach, our entire feed has been following you for the last few months, and everything that you've been doing for this entire month of April. It's absolutely inspiring. I love the work that you do. I love your dedication, and I love your spirit. And in turn, you've been inspiring us to keep going, to all your posts, every single one, constantly resharing to our people like this. It takes a world of individuals to make this change happen, not just in our communities themselves, but in the world. So thank you so much for being a part of that, and in turn inspiring us to keep going too.
Yeah, and everything that Dipti said is just we're trying to keep up with you because you're like really amazing, and so that's why we share a lot. But I want to say to everyone out there in the world, everyone listening, is that we're with you. We're connected to you, and I'm sending you so much love and light. In whatever your journey, your path on wherever you're at in your healing process. Lots of love.
We feel it. We feel it. Thank you. Thank you so much for spending part of your evening with us. And thank you all for joining us and as part of this conversation. The community is as wonderful as it is because you all are here. And again, this has been Deepti and Stevie with Sikh Saach. You can find them here on Instagram. Please give them a follow and support them any way you can. And thank you very much, Josh, for providing access for us. Thank you so much. Also, Josh, I like your blazer.
Thank you.
I have in case this stirred anything up, know that you can always reach out to me. The folks over at Sikh Saach has also offered that. Their DMs are open. You can reach out to them. I've also prepared a slide of resources that I am going to share. It is a full screen slide, so I will ask everyone to say their final goodbyes so I can share it. But again, thank you all for being a part of this community. We believe you, we support you.
Thank you
you.
so much.
Excellent. I will let them sign off. Thank you.